get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
This is so awesome.
We are an open culture that believes in importance of
What is that process that a developer, or let's say,
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed?
Hello and welcome to this week's Ask an OpenShift Admin Office Hours live stream. We are here live coming to you from the Grand Central Red Hat studios in each one of our houses, spread across the country. We actually are spread across the country today. So me on the East Coast, Johnny there in the middle of the country in Texas, and we are joined today by our special guest and co-host of the Git-Ops Guide to the Galaxy, Hilliary Lipsig. I hope
Lipsig, yeah.
All right, I didn't butcher it, which I'm famous for. Who is on? I just learned just prior to the show is on the West Coast. So, welcome. How's everybody's week going?
Good for me.
Yeah, it's good. You know, Memorial Day weekend was for me not a 3-day weekend. Right, I'm a reliability engineer, and I made the decision to, since I'm on call, I was like, I'll just work it and take a different day. It's fine.
Nice.
It's funny. So today's Wednesday, so the holiday here in the U.S. was 2 days ago, Monday, right? And my son, who is 14, getting ready to be in high school, he was asking me, like, "Oh, you don't have to work, and we're getting ready for summer vacation, and I should get a job." And I'm like, "You're 14, like that can wait, right? Be a kid for as long as you can." I'm like, because he's like me, he likes computers, he likes doing IT stuff and all that. I'm like, if you follow the sysadmin route, if you follow this kind of route that I did, like holidays they sometimes get co-opted. Like, that's when a lot of people are either, like you said, Hilliary, you're on call in case something goes wrong, or Johnny, you and I, when we worked together many years ago, right, there was a lot of times where it's, that week between Christmas and New Year's, that's when all the updates and upgrades happen, because that's when it's quiet.
Oh, that's exactly right. Anytime after Thanksgiving, that's like upgrade time because everybody's gone, or kind of like it's just real thin. So
unless you're in retail, and then it's the opposite. Right?
Oh, that's a nightmare at that point. Yeah.
Or the U.S. insurance industry, right? Because that's when open
enrollment.
Open enrollment. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a never dull moment around here, right? Even though it's early, late spring, not quite early summer, I guess. I saw on the weatherman this morning said it was the meteorological start to summer, which coincidentally is the same as the start of hurricane season here on the East Coast.
That's right.
And the Gulf Coast. I don't want to exclude you there, Johnny. But all
far
right,
enough away. It doesn't really matter for me. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're in San Antonio, so you're a little further inland.
Yep.
And West Coast people, I think, it's funny because we have this thing of East Coast people think West Coast people are crazy for earthquakes, and West Coast people think East Coast people are crazy for hurricanes.
Yeah, it's true though. How often has an earthquake destroyed my house? 0 times. 0 times has an earthquake destroyed my house. This happens roughly once every 100 years, depending on which fault line you're on, right? So technically, we're overdue for a big one. They say that forever. They don't really know. So you have to have your zombie apocalypse kit. Is actually just the California earthquake survival kit, right? Everybody has one. If you don't, you need to get one. Okay, West Coast folk, earthquake country folk, you need to have that, right? And then how SRE improve the death. You know what? I should do a tongue-in-cheek SRE survival guide to the zombie apocalypse. Pin that. That'll be a book. Let's get back to that later.
Yeah.
Do it.
So but we have all these things ready to go, right? In case the sky falls, the earth crumbles, what have you. But, it's basically then you've done the best you can to prepare, and you can't worry about it more, because if you sit there and you stress about it every single day of your life, you would go insane. So we don't. We just ignore it. It doesn't exist. We are not Damocles. There is no sword hanging over our bed, right? We sleep. And so, however, right, y'all with your tornadoes and your hurricanes, like these actually happen, reliably happen. And I don't know why you would live near that.
Yeah,
a thrill.
See, I look at it as most of those things are fairly predictable. Hurricanes we tend to know about at least a week, if not 2 ahead of time. Whereas earthquakes, they just happen. But I recently saw a thing that made me think of Californians and earthquakes, and it was some internet meme that's been around for a long time, I'm sure, of like, somebody asked an EOD, an explosive ordnance disposal guy, so the bomb squad, isn't that job stressful? Don't you worry about if you do the wrong thing? And the response was along the lines of like, either I'm right or it's suddenly not my problem.
Yeah.
and like earthquakes are kind of that way, right? If it's going to be that earthquake, well, it's just not. Yeah, it's problem solved.
I knew an old Air Force guy. He was an Air Force bomb tech, EOD guy, right? And he was always had this calm demeanor, and I didn't understand. And then then he told me he was like, yeah, I was a bomb tech in Afghanistan. I was like,
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. Well, I guess the level of like anxiety that you have is completely different than mine. He's like, I just don't worry about the little things at all.
Yeah. We're like I tell my kids, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you.
Yep, exactly.
I hate to break it to you, but the kids will outrun you.
Oh, they already do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're old. We're not outrunning our kids anytime soon. That's why we pretend like it's self-sacrificing. No, you go on.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I just know. I just know, right? I don't hedge my bets. I just know I'm going to lose that.
No, I'm trying. I'm gonna get them off the line, but they're gonna catch me.
I'm not just old. I'm fat. I got no hope. My kids are way more athletic.
Yeah.
All right. So, thank you, Hilliary. A little bit of background on today's stream. So Johnny and I, it was a holiday weekend and all of that other stuff. We both kind of zoned out, and suddenly it was like Monday afternoon and we realized, oh crap, we don't have a topic for this week. And so we were chatting on Slack amongst the four of us, the three of us here, and Christian, who's the other co-host for Git-Ops Guide to the Galaxy. And Hilliary had this great suggestion. So Hilliary, whenever we see you next, we owe you a beverage of your choice and a huge thank you for being willing to join us and talk about something that it's actually something that we probably should have talked about a long time ago. So I do appreciate you bringing it up, offering to join us, and I'm excited about today's topic. So
Great.
all right, so I see we've got a few questions already happening over in chat. We'll keep track of those. I do want to take a couple of minutes just to quickly go through our top of mind topics. So it's been a relatively quiet week. I guess a holiday will do that. So Johnny, I don't know if you heard of anything. I don't think there's been any releases or anything like that have happened.
Yeah, I didn't see anything. I was going back through and looking. Like the biggest thing is just the conference coming up. That's all I've really seen any news on.
Yeah, actually.
Stuff.
Oh.
Yeah. There is, if you are running OpenShift, you should definitely make sure to upgrade to the latest versions. There is a bug that can result in corruption of etcd in anything. I'm not sure which OCP version it is. In OSD, it's anything before 4.9.3. So it should be the same OCP version. That's like the non-managed OpenShift.
Yeah.
For those of you not familiar with our 3-letter acronyms, TLAs. If you are running OpenShift and you're below that version, you need to upgrade.
Is that new or different compared to the other etcd issue?
There are a lot of etcd issues. I'm not sure. But we're reminding everybody in the OpenShift dedicated realm right now, like, hey, folks, upgrade. You have to upgrade.
Okay, so let's see. So there was an etcd issue with 3.5.0 through 3.5.3, I think. That's etcd version, not OpenShift version or anything like that, where it would effectively have a silent corruption on one of the nodes as a result of it getting out of sync. And I want to say, I know for sure it was 4.10.9, and I want to say 4.9.28 were the versions where they inserted the mitigation, which is basically to have it do a check beforehand, and so that way if it corrupted, it would no longer be a silent corruption. It would be a, hey, I'm corrupted, I'm not going to rejoin the cluster error. And then I think I remember before the last couple of weeks and Summit and all of that, like we were on the cusp of having a fix in etcd 3.5.3 or 4 or whatever the next version was, but I don't know if that made it into OpenShift yet. So
yes, that is the one I'm talking about. That has made it into OpenShift. So
Awesome.
if you're running OpenShift, upgrade.
Awesome. Yes. Yeah, I'm always. I think I put on Twitter a while ago, like hills I'm willing to die on, and like always running the latest Z stream is one of those. Like,
Yes.
I'm pretty adamant about Z streams are important. Z streams is where we fix all of the bugs. We do all of those, apply security patches. All of those things happen in Z streams. They don't get backported to earlier Z streams. So Z streams should always be moving forward and always be kept up to date.
Yep.
Yeah, our Hope 9 4.10.10. Thank you. etcd, thank you for catching that, Hilliary. I did not. I missed that news and all of the other noise, I guess, of the day.
That's my job.
yeah, that's fair. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So a couple of other things. I said that there was no releases or anything like that. There was a relatively, it's small, but it's kind of important release in my opinion. So let me share my screen real quick. I want this guy. Yeah, I want that one. So I quickly deployed just a 4.10.11 cluster. It's not the current version, as you can tell. It's just the version of OpenShift install I had installed. And what I want to talk about is the general availability of the web terminal operator. So this is one that's been around for quite a while, probably a year, maybe even 2 years, just in tech preview status. And what it does is it offers you, or it gives you the ability to open a terminal directly inside of your browser. So let's go here and go to Operator Hub. We want web terminal. So we can see it no longer says tech preview up in the corner. We'll hit install and take all the defaults. And what's going to happen here is it'll deploy the operator. And then up here in the corner, I'll get another icon up here that looks surprisingly like here, it looks like this, the little caret underscore. It always reminds me of the PowerShell symbol.
Yeah, it does. It really does. If you look at the kube by example icon, it's got the kube, right? And then it's got this in there. I'm always like, it throws me off every time.
Yeah. So so once that gets installed, there'll be the little icon up here in the corner. When you click that, it'll pop up inside of your browser window a terminal session, right? It fires up a pod inside the cluster, and it's using your account, so you have whatever permissions your user account would have and all those other things. It's a great way to just, hey, I want to, from within my browser, have access to the terminal without having to, mess around with other things. You can see here for the stream, I actually use this a lot of times. So this is just guacamole that I have a SSH session over. So that way I don't have to fiddle around with swapping around shared windows. But the web terminal operator is a great way to get that inside of your browser too. Let's see here. So other things, yeah, see. All right, so it's installed. And now we'll come back up here to, I guess I got to refresh the browser. After a second, it'll deploy the thing and it'll be visible up there. We'll come back to that in just a second. Oftentimes, the operator deploying does not equate to the service being available. Hopefully we know that now. So just a couple of other things. So one, in this blog post here, and hopefully, Stephanie, I don't know if you're posting links to things. All three of these are in the notes document that we have. So I saw this blog post come across my feed. I recently installed Tiny RSS, which I've been getting. It reminds me of the Google RSS, right? The Google Feeds days. So I'm recollecting all the blogs, all the things to read. So if anybody has any suggestions, please, I would appreciate that. You can post them here in chat, or you can send them over in social media or email andrew.sullivan@redhat.com. So anyways, great blog post here. So Ian talks about how to do a Git-Ops type of method for creating and protecting etcd backups. So this is something that I think we universally encourage folks to do, create and protect those etcd backups. But I think we also want folks to understand that etcd backups are not a full disaster recovery type of solution, right? If my whole cluster is lost, it's not the best option for standing up a whole new cluster in the recovery site and then, going and restoring etcd onto that new cluster. It may work, but you're going to have a lot of problems and a lot of issues doing that. I don't remember if I've said it here on the stream before. Johnny, maybe you remember. a lot of times I think we forget to decouple application disaster recovery from OpenShift disaster recovery. And especially when we're talking about virtualized environments, right? We think, vSphere, Rev, OpenStack, all of that. We think, oh, if I just restore the OpenShift virtual machines, everything will come back. But right, there's a whole nother layer. Those applications need to be accounted for kind of completely separately. And the way that I usually talk to a virtualization admin about it is, think about your vSphere environment. If something happened in the primary environment, do you just do a backup of the ESXi host and then restore it onto a new ESXi host and, all the VMs will just magically come back and all the stuff inside? No, right? You have to restore vSphere and then you restore the VMs that are inside of there. Well, we do the same thing with OpenShift. You restore OpenShift and then you restore the applications that are deployed on top of OpenShift.
Yeah, I think you've talked about it in that context about like, especially in the virtualization layer, about like making sure that you have that as a separate service, like where you're backing up your virt and your application. It's always worth mentioning again, though. So
yeah, and I appreciate Hilliary nodding her head there. She's a day-to-day practitioner over on the OpenShift dedicated space. So getting reassurance from somebody that knowledgeable is always nice.
So it's the type of SRE I am is actually really important for this conversation, right? There are two distinct types of SREs at Red Hat. You have the SREs who are responsible for OpenShift dedicated itself. That's not what I do, right? I know how to do a lot of that stuff, probably most of it, if not all. I won't say all because I'm sure they know some interesting tricks I don't because I just never had to do it, right? I'm a layered product SRE or a managed service SRE. So when you look at things like the Red Hat Open API Manager, or you look at the Red Hat OpenShift Streams for Apache Kafka, ROSAC, it's managed Kafka, okay? That's what it is. When you look at that, that is what I'm a reliability engineer for. That is what my team manages. One of the same group, different teams manages Quay, right? Quay.io, right?
Yep.
That's what we manage. So my expertise is actually the apps that run on OpenShift. How is your application interacting with your platform, right? The OpenShift dedicated platform. And so a lot of what I do has to do with exactly that, right? How are we making sure that this service is running correctly on OpenShift, and how are we making sure that this service is recoverable with OpenShift? And I'm completely, I'm not 100% removing OpenShift itself from my considerations, but by and large, I don't actually go that deep into it because I'm at the application layer. And I don't actually necessarily care what the applications do either. I actually just care about that exact piece of how does this application run on OpenShift?
Yeah.
What's its topology? How does it interact with its components? How does its components interact with OpenShift? And how is it recoverable in case of a disaster?
Yeah, it's a question that, so I've been meaning to get Christian on for a long time, and you're just as good as Christian for asking or talking about the question of like Git-Ops. I think in particular sort of personifies or exemplifies this concept of the OpenShift cluster itself is disposable.
Mm-hmm.
We love our OpenShift clusters and we take care of them, but at some point it's time to use a Southernism, right? Cut bait. And just create a new one. And, particularly if you're using something like Git-Ops, it's, or ACM, right, has similar capabilities, or you can use both at the same time if you so choose. But deploy a whole new cluster, right, relay out the configuration and redeploy the applications, and it kind of all comes back. So it's one of those really interesting things for me around OpenShift, Kubernetes, containers, and the what I'll call the old mindset. I say old mindset because it's a mindset that I've had for 20 years. And I struggle with this whole thing of, no, I want to love my clusters. I want them to be healthy. I want them to be, all the purposes to all the things to all the people. But sometimes that's not the right case.
This goes back to that conversation. You remember a few months ago, we got asked, I can't remember his name now, but like we got asked offline about like why aren't clusters, OpenShift clusters, and that pets versus cattle conversation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we've always been talking about apps, and then we started talking about VMs like that. And then he was like, well, when are we going to get to the point when we're talking about clusters being cattle versus pets? And I think that that's where this kind of plays a big part of that.
Yeah. If you're not talking about clusters versus cattle, I don't know how to help you. Like, you should be there. So there's an interesting question. I want to address it real quick. It's, does Hillary's team use operators for these managed services or something else? And the answer is yes. Any managed service that Red Hat puts out must be a level 4 operator. So if you look at, what is it, operatorhub.io? I'm the worst.
Yep.
If you look at that, it has like a maturity model of operators in there. And so we actually have a requirement that the operators be a level 4 or better. And so in terms of actually how we manage these operators, right? Yes, we have internal operators as well that we use to make our lives better. We also have collections of scripts and so forth. And when one versus the other comes into play depends on what type of managed service it is, where it lives, if it's living on Red Hat owned infrastructure or actually end customer owned clusters, because I SRE services that do both. So that all depends. But these are operators. If you've seen my Helm and Back Again talk, I talk about these operators and some of the ways that an operator can burn you. But yes, so operators, yeah, big everyday operators for me, every single day.
Yeah, and there was a number of sessions at KubeCon as well around operators. Actually, I just submitted one to KubeCon here in North America, or jointly submitted one with some peers at a partner. And we can, so if we can, Stephanie, share my screen real quick. So if we go to operator or framework.io, so this is the site that you were referring to, I think, Hilliary. And if we go to the SDK documentation and then the documentation link and then overview, we have this nice little chart of operator maturity or operator capability level. So just for reference, this level 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have basic install, upgrades, lifecycle, deep insights. If you've ever wondered, like when you come over here to Operator Hub and you select, I'll pick one at random, that's what these capability levels map to. So these things right here are these things. And that's what it's referring to, right? Is what are the set of capabilities? What's the amount of automation that's built into that operator? Which, to be clear, and I think what you highlighted, maybe accidentally, maybe on purpose, that, just because you have an operator that does all of this automation, right, all the way to the point of, like you said, level 4, deep insights, it doesn't mean that we don't still need administrators. I feel like that's a conversation I've been having for 15 years, right? Of automation doesn't, remove our jobs as administrators. Automation means that we can focus on the most important things instead of mundane things.
So I've always said that. So my background originally was in QE and quality, quality engineering, and I've done tons of automation, right? Tons of automation. I've always told people automation does not replace the manual component. It makes it more efficient.
Yeah.
So whatever we're doing, we're working more efficiently when we've automated away what SRE calls the toil, right? Those mundane, repeatable, easily automated tasks that you have to do a lot that are not necessarily very difficult or very high lift or require the human thought process to execute on. There's a question in the chat about integration engineers and SREs. And I think this person's asked this twice now, so I want to address it. And the answer is no. I'm not saying that they're the same. I'm also saying that when I spent 11 years as quality engineer, 90% of my job is effectively the same as an SRE. So when you say integration engineer, it's actually going to depend a little bit on the company. The big thing to know about somebody who is a reliability engineer, the thing that we do that really stands apart is we are looking holistically. I actually sometimes say SRE is a quality function. We're looking holistically at these apps that we are asked to ensure the uptime for, right? We are looking at what are we telling the customer they're getting from this app, and we're looking holistically at how we make sure the app can deliver on those promises with or without us, right? So in both scenarios. So I care about things like integration points. I care about things like sysadmin. I have had to run Netcat to debug a production issue, right? Like that happens. Like a lot of sysadmin level things happen. code debugging, actual software engineering things happen, right? It's like sometimes it's one part IT, one part sysadmin, and one part software engineer, and sometimes it's all three in the same day. But that's not what sets SREs aside from the other professions. What sets SREs aside from the other professions is that experience and understanding of everything that can go wrong in production, and taking that and turning it around and driving the maturity model of the software we support to force it to be better, to make it more reliable, to insist on change. And I've said this, I went on a Dynatrace Pure Performance podcast a while ago, and I told them this is our like secret open source contribution, right? Our names are not on this. We don't write this code, but we're sitting there and we are working with these engineering teams that are providing these products, and we're telling them, hey, this is how you can improve things. This is, how you can change the way your scaling model works to be more highly available and more reliable, right? And so we have this very close relationship with engineering, or we try to have this very close relationship with engineering to get them to really understand not how their software works, but how their software runs.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I want to poke at inside of there. And I realize that we've kind of rolled right into our today's topic and out of the top of mind topics. So if anybody has any, no, that's fine. It's, the joy of working with another stream host is you know exactly how all these transitions work and all that. So thank you. So for anybody who is watching, please don't hesitate to ask any questions. I'll do my normal reminder here of whatever it is that's on your mind, anything OpenShift related, feel free to ask that in the chat. We'll do our best to answer those questions. We if it's related to today's topic, of course, we'll discuss it with Hilliary and get answers as best as possible. If it's other technical things, don't hesitate to ask those. We'll do our best to answer those too. If we can't find the answer, we generally know where to go and ask the answer inside of Red Hat, whether it's product management or engineering or any other teams. And we'll certainly do that and follow up either in a blog post or in a follow-up stream. All right. So with that out of the way, there's a couple of things I wanted to poke at in your last comment there, Hilliary. So one, I want to kind of talk about over the last, I keep throwing out random numbers, so I'm going to say like 14 years. Actually, that's probably pretty accurate. I think the first time that the term DevOps was used publicly was like 2008 or 2009. So we've heard, there's system administrators, there's DevOps engineers, there's SREs, right? There's these three core descriptors for people who are either responsible for the infrastructure or the platform or the application or various mixtures of all three of those. So Andrew's layperson description of each of those is effectively a system administrator, right? An operations team is responsible for basically everything that isn't the application historically, right? I was a VM admin for a long time, and I don't know what's going on inside those VMs. I don't even really care what the operating system is inside of those VMs. I want to make sure that vSphere or whatever it is that I'm using is up and running the most efficiently and effectively, right? High availability, all those things as possible. And then we had DevOps, and DevOps to me was, I'll say, teaching operations people how to be software engineers, right? So bringing an operations approach to software engineering. And SRE is sort of the inverse. I think a lot of times it brings software engineering to operations. And I agree very much with your very squishy my very squishy definition there. And you're, that's only half right. So I'm curious to hear your perspective of like, what's the difference between DevOps and SRE?
So I will say what SRE has done, and keeping in mind that SRE is not a very old job family, and it actually didn't even really gain that much popularity outside of Google as a family until fairly recently. Although I think I don't know. I don't remember what year they came out with it. I'm not going to try to remember. It's 8:30 in the morning and I haven't had coffee yet. So I'm not going to be recalling trivia like that. So like I said earlier, right? 11 years in quality engineering, and I did a lot of production support. I did a lot of SRE work, right? So what SRE has done is it's codified a set of responsibilities that was typically shared across several different people, right? In past lives, it was like myself, the sysadmin and the lead developer who had production keys, and it would be one or all of us going in and working on production issues. Basically, instead of the lead developer having production keys or the head of quality having production keys, or the person in charge of DevOps or sys administration or what have you having the production keys, you have the SRE group that has that. So what is DevOps? DevOps is about helping developers to not have to worry about the infrastructure so much. It allows developers to just think about the code and not the infrastructure. A classic LAMP stack, full stack developer had to understand what was happening in Apache and MySQL and PHP. Yes, that's what LAMP stack stands for: Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. You're welcome. I've talked to people who
loves to hate PHP.
I know, right? Oh gosh. Anyway, but a typical full stack developer had to understand everything that was happening in Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, right? When you add in DevOps and you give somebody the ability to create tooling to help developers integrate with their code with those pieces a little bit better, right? You get someone to handle the database administration ideally, right? That allows people to be a little bit more specialized, a little bit more focused. It actually allows you to deliver faster, better, more reliable code, right? When you start splitting out these considerations. So DevOps really was about how do we help get the developers delivering code in a consistent, reliable manner, and we will worry about the infrastructure and everything under the hood. They just have to basically use our tooling and write their code, right? And that's a lot of what DevOps does. And DevOps is still a really important role for that. I'm an SRE. That's not what I do. I make sure the developers are doing it. Like, I make sure they have CI/CD, but I'm not sitting there fine-tooth comb, like going through how it's done, how it's implemented, and if it works. Like, your stuff should work. That's on you. That's not my job, right? DevOps is still a really important role. DevOps may or may not have had production keys and doing production support. It typically was not. If there's something wrong with the infrastructure, sure, but typically not their job, right? The sysadmin, like you said, like, that's the person who can tell you everything that's happening in your server, right? The server is like, they know it like the back of their hand. They know where everything lives, how it's done, any little quirks about the operating system the server is running. Like, that's your sysadmin, right? They really are going to know what is happening on that bare metal, right? You have to know that. And so what was the third job family you mentioned? And then I guess the SRE, right? It's the SRE teams are, look, I spent a lot of us actually come from things like quality engineering or DevOps, or actually more scripting backgrounds and operations heavy backgrounds than actually software engineering backgrounds. Now, that actually depends a little bit on which team you're talking to, who's doing the hiring, what they think. Some of the other teams have sort of an inverse of that. My team's is like 50-50. Half of us have come from a sysadmin background, and half of us have come from some sort of software development background. And that creates a really great split, because we've been able to work on upskilling each other on this, on the different skills.
I feel like there's a diversity plug in there, right?
There's a diversity plug, yes. Diversity of thought, diversity of approach. The way of working in that kind of situation, I can go grab somebody who has a different background than I am, and they're going to see things I didn't see, and vice versa. And this is actually really important to the onboarding of tenants. So when we're looking at bringing a new service on and they want to have SRE support, there's an onboarding process for that, where we basically make them go through this whole rigmarole of checklists and everything else to prove to us that they're actually ready to be a managed service. And so we will typically have at least 2 people review it, ideally from my team, because we want to make sure we get somebody in there with that application development background and somebody in there with that operations background. Because although we're very senior heavy, my group, and there's a lot of, my team's been running apps since Red Hat acquired Feed Henry some time ago. And there was, that's what my team dates back to, is Feed Henry. Not me, by the way, I'm newer than that, but my team dates back to Feed Henry. And then there was something called RH Map, which was like a managed mobile application development platform. And then RH Map went into RHMI, and RHMI turned into today's Rome. So like more than 5 years, greater than 5 years. I think it's more like 7 years of operating apps at Red Hat, my team has. And so because of that, we're very senior heavy. We have a lot of people who really understand how to onboard and work with a tenant, and the other SRE teams do as well. I just don't talk about them because they're not my team, and I don't want to misrepresent
we don't like
anything
them.
they do. We love them. No, we love them. They're amazing. Don't say that. App SRE will do things like turn off Quay on you just because you said that. Like, don't.
Okay, yeah, I'm just kidding. Please don't do that.
Anger the people with production keys. App SRE would never do that. They would never do that. But anyway, so we have these two sets of backgrounds, and a good SRE team is typically balanced like that. You're not hiring developers with an interest in operations. You're not hiring operations with an interest in development. You're hiring people who enjoy production support. I say we're the adrenaline junkies of the software development world. Yesterday, I had alerts go off and hit my entire fleet at one time. I got hammered. Like 30 alerts are going off on my phone. I'm the person on the pager, right? And like my response is like, cool, let's do this, right? Like it's the cut and thrust. Like this is the persona of the SRE, regardless of which background you come from. That moment, that like Zen, everything's wrong and I can fix it moment. That's an SRE. We're kind of terrible, actually.
I just imagine like the pagers going off. You have like the trucker hat. You just put it on backwards. You know, put the fingerless gloves on. You're getting ready.
Yeah, hang on. We can pantomime this.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I see happen.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I do think it takes a special personality to deal with that type of pressure. Like most of the time when I caused a widespread outage, it like that the key phrase was there, I caused, right?
Yeah.
And like I can't tell you how many times I accidentally deleted the wrong data store inside of like vSphere, and you know, why did these 40 VMs just suddenly disappear? Like, wait, oops. And, you know, you go and fix the problem. And, you know, this was back when I was a junior admin. I say, I can't tell you how many times. I know exactly how many times it was, 2. It's one of those, like, there's some degree of, oh no, something is wrong. It is a widespread something. It is having significant impact and not panicking, which is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of questions here. I think you might have answered at least half, if not 3/4 of Khalid's question here. What's the difference between infrastructure background versus engineering background?
Yeah. If I didn't answer that satisfactorily, let me know and I'll come back to it. There's one from like way back. We didn't actually go back to. Johnny reminded us how does SRE help improve disaster recovery? And that's a really great question. And the answer is kind of what I talked about with the onboardings, and saying, hey, we're going to do this review and you have to approve these things. So we actually talked to the tenants during their onboardings about their disaster recovery strategies. And there's several different ways that when a disaster strikes, SRE makes decisions, right? We have to make data-driven decisions. So I have alerting and monitoring. The alerting and the monitoring tells me what to prioritize in the application. So, and then the other thing is the service definition. I actually have to know what we've promised customers. What's our SLA? Some SRE groups only care about the service level objective, right? Which is like, how are we trying to measure that we're doing well? But because I'm dealing with applications that are facing and end customers are purchasing, I have to care about the service level agreement, which is actually what do we tell the customer to get them to pay us? And so one of those things that we typically promise them is certain levels of uptime and the continuity of data, right? So we go through this during the onboarding process and make sure that we know how to do this, because there have been actual real times where as the SRE I've had to say, okay, the service is down because there's a problem with the data. The data appears to be corrupted. I can't really verify that or not, but the service is down. Do I keep the data and leave the service down, or do I delete the data and bring the service up, right? And I have to have disaster recovery guidelines and so forth from that. And so there's this actual exercise that I'm working on right now with the group called Disaster Planning Office Hours, which is an RCA, root cause analysis driven presentation that we give. And it is about talking about real incidents like the one I mentioned and how we had to respond and what caused them and so forth, so that customers can better understand and start thinking, what will go wrong with my software? Because that's the SRE expertise, is we can tell you what will probably go wrong and help you plan accordingly. So a lot of the disaster recovery stuff is actually done. Some of it's tooling. There is tooling, of course. It's actually done during the onboarding. So working with the tenants to make them think about it sooner and come into being a managed service with a plan. Because at 3 a.m. and everything is on fire, I need a SOP, an SOP, standard operating procedure. And that is a document that tells me step by step with copy pastable things what to do so that at 3 a.m. I do not have to think. And we help them write those SOPs and make sure they meet that standard.
I think there's something that you mentioned it before, and I feel like you're glossing over it here, which is you also have that relationship with the engineering, the AppDev teams.
Yes.
To drive that awareness back into the product itself,
Mm-hmm.
so that it's not an afterthought. It's not made more difficult. Ideally, the application helps with that whole process, and removing those what I'll call barriers to availability. So I think that that's an important thing to highlight as well. Is it's not just a different way to think about the proverbial wall of deployment and all that other stuff, right? Rather, there's a significant relationship that should be happening there.
Yeah, you're actually living the loop, right? You're actually like going through the feedback and providing feedback and taking the results and putting it back in the product. Yeah, that's
Yep.
good
We
call out,
are
Andy.
the software development lifecycle. That's
Mhm.
us. We're just driving the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
what is the OODA loop? OODA. I think that came out of the Air Force, if I remember correctly. Anyways,
Yeah.
I'll dig up that link and we'll post it into the chat here.
so there was another question: how to become an SRE as a current sysadmin, right? And I think I'm getting caught up on questions now. So that one's hard, right? Because it depends on where you want to be an SRE and what their requirements are and the organizations. I will say that Red Hat is working on putting out some open source SRE training. A little bit of a spoiler alert: you can sort of start seeing things on Operate First about this. You will see content that comes from myself and others on this. I would say, look at the training. As an SRE, I'm typically considered a jack of all trades, right? I mean, I do Git-Ops. I support Git-Ops infrastructure as well as an SRE. I do Ansible. I do, programming. I have to know IT stuff. Typically, you really have to be sort of like,
I call it big picture oriented. You have to
Yeah.
understand the big picture, right?
you really do. And it's okay to have like a niche set skill, but yeah. And then of course the thing is like, how do you respond to pressure? Like I said, I got hammered yesterday for over an hour of constant alerts as something is going wrong with my entire fleet. That's not an unusual day in an SRE land. So you were speaking earlier at the beginning of the stream, like, oh, it's been such a quiet week. And I was laughing, internally laughing, because no, it wasn't.
Yeah, I'll quiet from an announcement perspective, not from a
Right. But the customers don't know, because when do our alerts go off? Our alerts don't go off when we've slipped our agreement. Our alerts go off when we could be at risk of slipping our agreements.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when SRE acts. So by the time the customer would know, we've already fixed it. That's the nirvana. That's the goal. So that's really it. So wanting to go from a sysadmin to an SRE, you're basically going to need to get familiar with some of the tools that are kind of considered DevOps oriented, and then you're going to need to basically have the opportunity to do production support. Not to say that you won't find a group that's willing to train you, but that's one of the things that we typically ask during the interview is like, hey, what experience do you have with production support? Because you will get a pager alert. It will be at 3 a.m. You will not be happy about that, and you will still need to do the thing and know how to respond and know how to escalate if things are well outside your control. Like sometimes the pager alerts are because Amazon has done something terrible and you can't actually fix that.
Right.
So you made a comment earlier about how your team is kind of senior heavy, meaning that it's largely more senior people. Do you find that that's common? Like it's hard to hire somebody who is a junior or a brand new to the industry to be an SRE because you do need that production support experience?
It is fairly common, and it's exactly that. My group is actually my particular team. All of our hiring is intended to be not senior at this point. We would like to hire people who may not have this experience and teach them and upskill them. Now, the trick is, how do you teach somebody to have production experience, right? I actually have devised a chaos engineering game for this. It's called Combat. It's Kubernetes Chaos Combat. It is a red, blue, green team. It's you'll be familiar with this kind of concept, I'm sure. So you have this. We stand up a copy of the infrastructure that we would be supporting with the applications that we would be supporting, or an application that we would be supporting. And before the game starts, the red team has to go in and break it. So now it doesn't matter. And engineering plays, QE plays, CEE plays, and SRE plays. So we have these groups, and you rotate through the teams. So you're not always engineering as engineering. Sometimes you're engineering as the saboteur. Sometimes you're engineering as the SRE team. And so like that, we're doing like the second round of this right now. We're trying to run it quarterly. And so it forces people to learn a different perspective about supporting the infrastructure in production. And it actually practices real incidents. So we go in and the red team goes in and break things. Actual alerts are firing, right? We do actual escalations to engineering or other like SREP, the platform SRE group, just like it was a real production incident. And the other SRE groups do something similar as well. This is just the way my team does it. And so we run this game and and create real incidents that you have to respond to and try to make sure that we're within the SLOs and SLAs and everything and so forth. So we actually, that's what we're using for trading. And then we're working on phase 2 of this is actually turning this into Ansible playbooks. They create the environment and then they go through and break it in various scenarios that help the people learn how to debug, because that's the way to practice. We practice production support that way. Yeah. And so that's one of the reasons we feel very confident, aside from being generally senior heavy, one of the reasons we feel pretty confident bringing in people who have not been SREs before to be SREs with our group is because we feel confident in our ability to train them.
You get a clean slate too, right? Like you do get some like untainted experience where you're not predispositioned to do a certain thing a certain way because that's what you've known to do. You're learning from you guys. And,
yes, exactly. Cool. So it is absolutely that. And it just, SRE is a great job, and like I said, like I did it as quality engineer. And if I can, just be very frank with you, as a quality engineer, I didn't make anywhere near the amount of money I do as an SRE. And the work was exactly as hard. So this industry needs to do better by quality engineers, just FYI, as a rule. Seriously underappreciated, but it's a really good job. And it's honestly all of my favorite things about quality engineering exist in SRE.
Yeah, so I'm not to cut you off or in that conversation. I'm just reading back through questions here.
Yeah.
So I see Shubham, I think, asked developing, 2 projects, one developing Ansible playbooks and the other managing Kubernetes infrastructure for dev teams. Does that mean that you're a DevOps engineer or an SRE? And I like our Hope 9's response of, why not both? I think a lot of times we focus on this job title has these responsibilities, and reality is it's quite messy. And we end up with a lot of different roles and responsibilities. And, I would argue that many of us who call ourselves a system administrator, maybe our job title is system administrator. We're probably doing DevOps and SRE and maybe even sometimes, engineering, right? Software engineering type roles. I know that there's a number of folks who have contributed pull requests to various software projects that they use, right? I'm a sysadmin. I encountered this problem. Here's the solution for it. Here's how to fix it. Ironically, that's how the poison pill operator came about, right? Hey, somebody needed the ability to quickly recover, from a lost node in less than the 5 minutes that that the default scheduler takes. So it's here. I made this thing that does this thing, and they were a sysadmin, and so I think it's messy, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong, if you will. Let's see. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the next one is going to be Meadow. Coming back to the cattle clusters, how long does it take for a new Red Hat cluster to be production ready? Doing a lot of Git-Ops stuff, but he's saying that there's still a lot of, or they're saying that there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be done manually, semi-automated because of the compliance operator and security requirements. And that's one of those crazy, like, it just depends because like it's all about like what your organization levies on you as a requirement, because there could be some things that the compliance operator can go through and remedy quickly, or there's a lot of things that you can potentially put in like Kubernetes jobs that can go in and secure some of the things that you need to do, or if you have some type of CI tooling that you can do some of the security stuff on the front end before you ever get the cluster up. And then that way you're deploying those jobs and those tools to the cluster as it's coming up. It just really depends. And it depends on how mature the organization is.
Yeah, I'll add on to that of Hilliary, you mentioned, one of the big things or one of the big metrics with SRE teams is SLAs. And you can't just have an arbitrary SLA, So in order to be able to define your SLA, you have to understand all of those things and what happens. So, it's how long, disaster happens, whatever it is. So how long does it take me to get a cluster back up? Well, if it's an hour, then you have to factor that into your SLA. And if your SLA needs to be less than an hour, then you have to figure out, what are the things that I can change to improve that? Maybe it's pre-staging certain parts of, new cluster deployment. So that way it's faster. Maybe it's, more involved or more thorough automation in order to make things faster. I've always taken the approach of the amount of time it takes is the amount of time it takes. And either we have to work around that through automation and other things, or through the SLAs that we define. But yeah, if you don't know what that is, then you can't really effectively make those plans.
Yeah, and Sean Nelson made a good point, and I'll just quickly say what's up to Sean. But he says a metrics-based process mapping could help measure the process, or how long the process can take to create that prod cluster. But at the end of the day, right, it's a maturity thing. You have to have, you have to know which metrics you need to collect, and then how to actually interpret those metrics, and then make a decision based off of that, right? And it's definitely, the tools are there. It's just it takes time to get there, and it's organizational maturity at the end of the day.
I'm giggling at our Hope 9's comment there. Security doesn't have to be hard or take a long time. It just has to be secure. I saw a picture on the internet the other day, and it was a Ethernet cable, and it had printed on the side of it, "Cut here to activate firewall."
Damn right.
The most secure system is the one not connected to the network, right?
That's true, though. That's absolutely true.
And then, so just going back to the SRE from sysadmin type of conversation that we were having earlier, Lester was saying that, obviously we have to bring up junior people. So Lester made a comment about bringing up junior people from the ranks, so that way they can get the experience. So that way they'll become the seniors, and they'll be the ones mentoring the new group of people coming in. And then at the end of the day, right, it comes down to fundamentals, right? You have to have a fundamental, basis of knowledge to be able to do anything really with, Linux and OpenShift, Kubernetes, SRE. So good call, Lester.
Yeah. Again, though, when we go back to, I was talking about the chaos engineering game, right? We make that's exactly the goal of the game, is to make sure that we can say with confidence that before we put these people on the pager, that they have that. And some of what you get during the interview process, you typically get people with a couple years experience, but we've absolutely hired somebody straight out of college. And she was amazing. She was absolutely incredible. So it's how well do I think I can work with this person, and how well do I think this person and I can work together is also based on things like, do I think that they're going to complement my skill set? Not do they mirror my skill set? Do I think they're going to complement my skill set? Do I think that I can help them grow? I'm the technical lead, right? So when I'm looking at somebody, I love to find people who know things I don't know. Makes my life so much easier. But also, do I think I can help them grow? And then having created these processes to train, to teach debugging skills, to teach, Linux fundamental pieces. We have several requisite training things in there. Do I think this person can learn what they need to learn? And of course, do I think that they can handle the stress? Because that's really the biggest thing, is if you can handle the stress of this job and you can copy paste at 3 a.m., we're going to be good. We're going to be fine.
So a bit of I don't know how easy a question it is or difficult. Do you think that troubleshooting skills are something that somebody can learn?
Yes. I learned them.
Because I would agree. So it's funny. So I used to work for a storage company, and one of the co-founders is a well-known, or was a well-known speaker before he, retired and did whatever co-founders do after they're gone. And I remember sitting in new hire orientation, right? So, it's this like 2-day thing, and you have, lunch with, senior execs on day 2 and all this other stuff. And he was sitting at the table, and one of the other folks at the table asked like, "Oh, how did you become such a great speaker?" And like, this is after he'd given us like an hour-long presentation talking about how he was like a super introvert and all this other stuff. And so she asked him like, "How did you become such a good and well-known public speaker?" And like completely deadpan, like just immediate response: practice.
Yep.
Right.
Practice.
And to me, like basically, people talk a lot about how, talent, that person, playing an instrument, they have so much talent. Talent gets you started and gets you so far. It's the investment in time and practice and, all of those things. And it applies with basically any skill, troubleshooting included.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, because I encountered a lot of folks, when I was a practicing administrator full time, junior folks, and it's, oh, I'll never be able to learn how to do that. I'll never be able to do this. I don't know how you learned that skill or how you did this. It's literally just do it.
I banged my head into a wall hundreds of times and then finally got it right once.
Yeah.
So I'm actually, fun fact, I'm self-taught, right? I didn't go to college at all. And so I can tell you, you can absolutely teach yourself the skills, right? You absolutely can. You can learn them, and you can practice them, and do things like look for capture the flags, right? Capture the flag games are a really great way to learn troubleshooting skills because a lot of that will come into troubleshooting and other odd things. I want to go to this question I see in the chat. Does SRE require cluster admin privilege on OpenShift? No. I can break glass and get cluster admin if I absolutely need it, but I actually have locked down RBAC. I don't have cluster admin.
I didn't know that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Thinking about it, it makes sense, particularly for, with OSD and I'm sure I know there's SRE teams for the other managed services as well. That makes sense. A lot of our customers can't, right? Like regulatory things can't give cluster admin all willy-nilly.
Nope. If I have to use cluster admin, I will receive some compliance paperwork that I have to do from from ProdSec and InfoSec and explain what did I touch. And I mean, they know what I touched. They can see it, right? It's logged. But what did I touch? Why did I touch it? Why was it necessary? There's a whole piece of paperwork that we have to do. It has to go through various layers of approval to demonstrate that what I did really needed doing. So yeah, no, we have to stay within our RBAC, and we have to make sure before we break that glass that we are actually like needed to be outside our RBAC.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, our Hope 9, 90% of troubleshooting is having seen it before. I don't know if it's as high as 90%. I think a lot of it, and when I used to interview administrators, like hiring, Unix Solaris administrators, hiring Linux administrators, I always made a point of asking a lot of like super esoteric, crazy questions that nobody in their right mind would know. With the purpose being, you have to know like where to go for help, like where to look. I don't expect you to know like what's all of the specific parameters and how to use them for the ls command because there's like 400 of them. Rather it's, well, I think I'd start by doing a man of this, and if that didn't have the answer, then I would go and look here and and like I want to know that process. And I think troubleshooting is very similar. Maybe there is some experience, or I would say there is definitely some experience of I can jump to step 4 or 5 based off of experience. But everybody should be able to start with, I see something wrong. Now, what's the next step of, do I look in logs? And where are those logs? And okay, you kind of pull that
What
thread.
am I looking for in the log? Yeah.
If I have this thing in the log and I've never seen it before, I'm going to go open my favorite search engine, copy, paste, search. I have done this live with customers. I don't know what this means. Let's Google it.
We're not supposed to admit that Google is
Yeah, I think a big thing about troubleshooting is like you just have to be creative, right? You have to like it's not binary, right? The problem, it may be very similar, but it's not always 100% the exact same. So you have to be able to kind of like look at it from holistically and say, okay, well here's the different things that could affect it, and then just kind of be creative with it. And that I think helps when you have like a deeper problem because you don't get stuck on trying to go linearly, trying to go linear along your line or your process going A to B, B to C. It's not like networking, right? You actually have to be able to like, okay, this is the thing. Let me look at it. Let me take a step back and figure it out.
It actually happens in the managed services quite frequently that the alert that fires is not the actual problem that's happening.
Yeah.
There'll be some other problem that causes a problem in that thing. And so you actually, what you're getting pinged on is the cascaded effect, but you have to be able to trace it all the way back.
Mhm.
And so if I just, got stuck on well, this is the alert, this is the error, this is what should fix it, and it's still not working, right? That wouldn't be like the most useful. So like it is understanding, again, I have to understand how the apps are interacting with their platform. So that particular piece of it comes from experience and asking for help a time or two before from somebody who knew it a little better, raising things with engineering, having that relationship with engineering that allows me to go back and be like, oh, you're freaking out because this other thing you use is actually crash looping, and I'm just going to go re-roll that stateful set and solve that problem.
Hilliary, all that's supposed to be in the onboarding packet, right? All of those relationships, all that's well documented and
Always.
thoroughly.
Every
Actually,
time.
it is in our onboarding packet to go to certain meetings and meet certain people. Believe it or not, yes. Part of our onboarding is, hey, new person, meet engineering. Engineering,
Yeah.
new person, right? Like it actually is in our onboarding. I know you were joking, but that is part of the onboarding. Is to go meet the people you need to have relationships with.
Yeah. No, we do the same thing on our tech marketing team. So
yeah.
Our Hope 9, yeah, thank you for the let me Google that for you link. I pull that out occasionally when somebody has asked me the same question like 40 times, and or I've had other people on my team where people will send, like each person on the team the same question to see what responses they'll get, and then they'll pick their favorite one.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aryan, thank you for your comment. Thaddeus, has coding been mentioned? I see a lot of DevOps SRE jobs that list coding as a requirement.
I touched it briefly, and let me answer this because this is going to depend on the organization. Some organizations, the SRE teams, find a bug in production and they actually go all the way through and fix the production bug, and they need to be able to code for that. That is not how my SRE team does it. I support apps in Golang, Ruby, Java. There's Python in there. We are language agnostic in what we support, so we don't fix production code bugs. We identify them, we'll file the JIRAs and tickets for them, but we don't actually fix them. So that how much coding you really need depends on what type of SRE organization you're going into. And whether or not you're going to be expected to fix bugs as part of the SRE team. I don't like that model personally. Because I think that you get like way too stuck into one kind of coding thing. And then it depends on the team again. So even though SREs at Red Hat don't fix code bugs like that, some of our teams do more like traditional software development stuff than others. My team, I mentioned again, has a very like 50-50 split, lots of people with sysadmin background. So when we're typically doing tooling and automation, we use a lot of Bash, we use some Python, occasional Golang, this or that. And Ansible playbooks, right? Because those are YAML driven, and we all know how to lint YAML in our sleep at this point. So we typically ask that someone has the ability to script in Python when joining my team, and we're looking for things like, okay, can you do scripting, but did you also handle for like errors, right? We want to know that you can also script and like it, but it's fault tolerant. So you should be able to script out something that solves a problem and is fault tolerant. That's about the level of coding that I think you need to be a successful SRE.
Yeah. You don't need to be a software engineer, but you do need to. I think having the ability to read code and understand what's happening is important. I fall into one of those things like I can't write a lick of C, but I can read it and I can tell you generally what's going to be going on. Assembly's on a whole nother language or a whole nother level. I got no hope there, but
yeah.
Most languages, and my son, again, he's 14, right? He has an interest in these things. He's been doing coding classes, and I've been very adamant with him of learn the fundamentals, right? Learn what a loop is, learn how logic, is handled, learn all of these things. And the language is really unimportant after that. It's just syntax. You want to write in Perl and use all the keys on your keyboard? By all means.
I love Perl.
I wrote a lot of Perl.
I love Perl. Perl is that you can do absolutely anything in Perl, and that regex is it's perfect.
Perl's like a bully programming language. It's like if you want to like just abuse somebody with like how nerd you are, that's what Perl is.
I mean,
it's an alpha nerd language for sure.
I'm really really, really not sure how I feel about being called an alpha nerd right now.
Embrace it.
I have so many wow thoughts on that. But okay, yes, I love Perl. I absolutely love Perl. Perl will do whatever I want it to do. Whether or not it should is not the issue.
And you can probably do it in one line.
You can do it in one line. Yes, I love Perl.
That's the one I heard all the time. Well, I could do this in one line in Perl.
Yes, it wouldn't be human readable or at all. So the thing I love about Perl is a language that taught me I can learn anything in 17 hours. I learned Perl for a job interview. A job interview, and I had to do a coding project in Perl over a course of a weekend, and then I had to go in and do the coding stuff live. I did not get that job because I learned Perl for the interview, and it kind of showed. But I learned Perl in 17 hours of straight up working on learning Perl. And I honestly, that was the one I was like, I can actually do this. I can learn anything. My app that I submitted, by the way, had unit tests and everything, because unit tests are life. And that's my hill. I'll die on that one, by the way. But yeah, I love Perl. I will always love Perl. Perl is very powerful. I've had to do some Perl scripting to get some weird data reconciliation stuff done. I love Perl. I have a book. Perl One-Liners is literally a book my husband bought me for our anniversary this year.
Nice.
Oh, that's real.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I would say that Perl has its quirks. It has its uses. I used to write a lot of Perl to do data analysis.
Yes.
Because I had a gigantic database that tracked storage utilization and all that other stuff, so I could do trend analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So kids in high school, when you're doing basic algorithms and stuff like that, right? Not calculus level, when you always say, "Oh, I'll never use this again." Yeah, learning how to do linear regression in Perl so that you can do capacity predictions for your storage system, that was fun back in 2008, 2009. No, I hate math.
I don't. Yeah, people ask me all the time, "Oh, you're in engineering. Are you good at math?" No, the computers do the math for me. I don't math. I literally have dyslexia. You do not want me to math.
Oh, yeah. Man, trip down memory lane. We need to invite you back more often, Hilliary.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah. John, Python is the new Perl, given all the feature creepy one-line noise is real. I always thought that PowerShell was a lot. PowerShell is like the Windows version of Perl, because PowerShell folks love one-liners. How many things can I pipeline together with my PowerShell scripts? Used to write network security scripts in Perl. Yep. Yeah. That I think every.
Just kidding. Perl's not necessary. It's very secure that way.
So yeah, Perl is one of those, and I think Python falls into that category. It's kind of universal, right? You can do basically anything with it. Sometimes it's easier than others. I would argue that at this point, despite the prolific number of modules in CPAN, Perl is more difficult than some other options out there. But that doesn't mean it's less capable, right? People still willingly create things in assembly or C or C++.
PHP still exists for reasons I cannot fathom.
I wasn't going there, but
I took PHP off my resume, actually. I took it off.
Is that because you didn't want any more job offers, or?
I just did not want to hear. I didn't want anybody reaching out to me about PHP ever again. Oh god, yeah, hardware drivers in Perl. Yeah.
Oh, that's abnormal and unnatural.
So the smart meters on your house. Those I don't know if they still are. They were originally done in Perl. That software, and a lot of web to print, industrial printing. Those programs on the printers are actually done in Perl as well.
Yeah, that one I knew about. I didn't know about the smart meters. That's interesting.
Yeah, if you remember when we were peers at our old customer, if you remember, a lot of the scripts that built out all the apps and stuff like that, that was all written in Perl.
Yeah,
so we deployed all that stuff in Perl. Yeah,
I know we had a lot of love for Perl. That's why I learned it. Yeah. That's how I got started in. Jamal, new to OpenShift, most problems I've faced when deploying are privileged containers. What's your tip for it? Yeah, so that's pretty common actually. So OpenShift does not allow root in containers or privileged containers by default. Of course, you can force the issue. You can set all the right things inside of there and make that happen. There is actually an entire series of blog posts and other things available on the developer site excuse me, let me see if I can dig up the links for that. But there's like how to write applications for OpenShift or how to deploy applications in OpenShift type of content that walks through all of those things. But in general, the two biggest ones are, as you pointed out, no root and no privileged. So you actually have to, figure out what the correct permissions are. In your container definitions, you assign a user ID that's not root. If you're accessing things, right, keep in mind that UIDs are randomly assigned when the pod is started. So if you're accessing, say an NFS export or something like that, if it's tied to a specific UID, access to those files is tied to a specific UID, not a group ID, because you can set the supplemental group ID. You're going to have a bad time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll see if we can dig up that link. Jamal, if you'd like, you can send me a message. So you can send me an email, andrew.sullivan@redhat.com, or on social media, Practical Andrew on Twitter, Reddit, all of the places. Thank you, Stephanie, for popping up my contact information there. So yeah, if you reach out, I'll shoot you back that the link along with any other information that we have, because it is a fairly common thing that comes up. So it is, we're approaching 12:15 here on the East Coast, which is well past coffee time on the West Coast for Hilliary. So if anybody has any questions, if there's anything that is still outstanding in your mind, if we missed a question, for example, hopefully we didn't, but it does happen. Please go ahead and get those in here. We'll address those before we end our stream. I do want to take an opportunity to point out a couple of things. So one, we will not be streaming next week. So I'll be on PTO, first time going on vacation in like 2 years, thanks COVID. So I'm looking forward to having a little bit of downtime. And I believe Stephanie, our producer, who anytime you see like OpenShift or Red Hat or that user on whatever platform you're watching us on, that's actually Stephanie in the background. So she's keeping us moving and keeping us functioning here on the stream. So I think Stephanie is also on PTO next week. And Johnny, we asked Johnny if he wanted to go it alone, and he said no, thank you.
Yes, fact.
So, yeah, I get it. I don't. It's
like talking to a brick wall. It's terrible.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
it's. I have never done it. Have I done? I might have done it completely by myself once. I don't think I did though, because I think I've always had Stephanie or you or Chris Short when he was doing when he was here. I don't think I've ever done it by myself. So yeah, it's a lot going on. So yeah, we won't be streaming next week. The week after, we will be back. Much like this week, I don't know the topic yet, but we do have a really good list of things this time. Last week we had like nothing, and like I said earlier, Hilliary bailed us out. So please, whatever platform you're on, subscribe. You can follow us on social media, and as soon as we nail down or cement the, I'm using a lot of construction analogies today. Our topic for 2 weeks from today, we'll be sure and share that, so that way you can join us. There's lots of interesting stuff that's going on as well. Yeah, Johnny, make the leap of faith.
I considered it for a moment, and then that moment passed, and the answer was no.
Yeah. I'll also encourage folks to check out the Git-Ops Guide to the Galaxy. So the next stream is tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, which is noon Pacific, if my time zones are correct.
Yes, you are.
Time zones are hard, and they get harder all the time. All these time changes. I wonder if we'll ever get rid of daylight savings time. I can only hope.
No, we voted for it in California. We still didn't make it happen, and I was really bitterly disappointed.
I would love to not have to worry about the time shift, but it's like leap seconds and all that other stuff, right? It always causes issues. There's always some random issue that comes up.
We should just use UTC. Just UTC.
Yeah. I like how you magically have a cup of coffee appear.
My husband loves me a lot.
Don't
awesome.
think I missed that. Yeah, that's my wife does the same thing. Occasionally she'll bring beverages. Anyways, so thank you so much to Johnny for joining me today, to Stephanie for helping us out. Hilliary, again, thank you so much for joining us. This has been super fun, super enlightening. I've had the opportunity. We have a lot of really smart people, yourself included, here at Red Hat, who not just practice DevOps and SRE, but who are also like well known and really good at pontificating about it. So, John Willis, Andrew Clay Schaefer, they're both here at Red Hat. I would definitely encourage you to check out the stuff that they've published on the topic as well. They're way more knowledgeable on it than I could ever hope to be. What's that thing about they've forgotten more about it than I'll ever know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, with that, I think I've said all my thank yous. I think I've reminded folks of everything that I need to remind you of. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. And then I will hand over to Johnny for last words, or Hilliary, if you'd like to say anything, any parting shots.
Any parting shots? Oh man, that's like inviting it. I'll leave you poor old men alone. We do have, as mentioned earlier, we have tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, Git-Ops Guide to the Galaxy with Christian Hernandez and myself. I'm terrible. I believe our topic is Argo CD notifications. So that's like a very like hard turn from what we discussed here today, but it should be a good episode, and I hope folks that will join us for that. And then we can just give Christian during his practical demo a lot of grief about the fact that he's not doing it in Perl. It'll be fun. Join me for that.
Oh, I'm definitely joining now.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Yeah, no, Hilliary, thank you for coming on. This was awesome. I had a great time. I know, like, it's fun cutting up with you, and so it was great having you come on and really bail us out. So for all the viewers, make sure that you go to YouTube or wherever you're watching from and like and subscribe, so that way we can kind of keep these things going. And Stephanie, as always, you're awesome. Thank you so much for everything. And yeah, see you.
Have a good weekend, everybody.